Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Law and Finance Show. And today we have another great guest on because one of the things about running a business and running a law firm is at some point there will be innovation that hits the legal industry in ways that we probably haven't seen before. So I wanted to bring a guest on that really is revolutionizing the personal injury space. So you want to stay tuned for this interview. So let me bring on my guest, Joshua Schwadron. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. This was one that I was very interested in because, you know, being a business owner myself, one of the things that I know is that no industry will stay exactly the same forever. Revolution is coming to every industry at some point. And you don't want to be on the, I guess you'd say, the lagging side of that revolution. So, very interested to talk to you about what you guys are doing at Mighty. But before we jump into that, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm a lawyer by education. I practiced a little bit after law school, but I was always more interested in the business side. And over the last decade, have really found the intersection that was worked for me, which is actually aptly also the title of your show, where I've been able to combine my legal background, but also my finance and business background in order to innovate and build businesses in the legal part of the world. And I've really been interested in understanding how the traditional personal injury system works and the inefficiencies and the problems that the industry has, and working to try and find a solution that ultimately is better for the person who gets injured.
Gotcha. One of the things I'm curious about is you mentioned about, the business side, I always seem to interest you in some form or fashion. So, did you feel like you were like an anomaly of a lawyer because you were interested in the business side and not just the technical legal side of things?
Very much so. I remember my second summer of law school when all of my friends were going to big law firms. I was working on political campaigns and working in investment banks. So it actually started in law school, the sorts of internships I decided to pursue. And my first job at a law school, I was actually working for a hedge fund as opposed to a law firm. And interestingly enough, that first role, I worked on litigation finance. And so this was 20 years ago, before it was called litigation finance, but it gave me really my first foray into the intersection between law and money.
Awesome. Now, I guess as you kind of, move through your career in that aspect, at what point did it really start to like, I guess, just become like this burning thought in your mind of, I really care about, the legal industry and the personal injury specifically enough to say that I'm going to start a business in that area?
Yeah. So I think it's rare to have a moment where you just wake up and all of a sudden are passionate about something, and that did not happen to me. I started a company about a decade ago that was financing people after an accident, and at the time I had never expected to be interested in it or do it, but I thought it would be an interesting way to create a side business. And in doing that, I saw firsthand how much money these finance companies made, how much money the law firms made, how much money the doctors made, and how screwed the actual consumer who was injured is after a case. And I was really appalled by it, and really was inspired to solve that problem, which is that often in big industries with repeat players who have money, political connections, and wherewithal, they often uh, take it from the one-time players, in this case, the consumer who is injured, and there needs to be a counterbalance, a company like Mighty that helps to make those people whole. So it was seeing firsthand by being in the industry uh, all of the problems that inspired me to create the solution.
Awesome. That's a very interesting because, even as I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and that just seems like a recipe for, hey, like, an entrepreneurial energy needs to be exerted here. It's like there's a sector of the market where there is a ton of money flowing through it. There are people who are experiencing problems. It's like, hey, a solution needs to be inserted here.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more.
Now, I guess were you shocked as you started to kind of, dig a little bit deeper to realize like, how much of a, let's say a disadvantage or just a place of just not knowing the consumers were when it comes down to like, hey, a personal injury accident happens, consumers are just completely lost, or do you feel like consumers do have an idea of what should happen?
Well, consumers have no idea what should happen. I think what surprised me is when I first got into the exploration phase of how we solve this problem. I had a lot of conviction that the biggest problem was insurance companies. That the liability insurers had everything stacked against the plaintiff side of the aisle. And I very much wanted to empower the plaintiff side of the aisle in order to get an edge on the insurance companies. And the more I've been in personal injury and have experienced all of the different market dynamics, the more I realize that the problem is not just the insurance companies. It's also the personal injury lawyers. It's the doctors. It's the finance companies. Consumers are largely on their own. And everybody wants their piece of the pie. And unfortunately, it comes at the expense of the consumer. And I really don't know of any party who has their incentives and interests aligned with the consumer in a way that is healthy. And that's a real tragedy because these are people who often had the worst day of their lives, are injured, don't know what to do, often can't come up with more than $1,000 in the case of an emergency. And they're looking to lawyers and insurance companies for help. And they're often re-victimized all over again by the system. And that's really tragic.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess with a issue that is that big, and like I said, I mean, it happens to so many people who are in an unfortunate situation, going through, let's say, an injury that they have no idea what's going on. And there's been, there are major players in this industry that are on the other side of that. Now, when you set out to, revolutionize this, just kind of, has it been an uphill climb of really bringing your solution to the industry? Have there been some pushback from other players in the industry?
Yeah, so Mighty started as a B2B company, and about 6 months ago, we launched a consumer brand, and that consumer brand had Mighty affiliate with a independent law firm that's owned by the lawyers that work there, independent of the ownership of Mighty, a law firm called Mighty Law. And Mighty Law together have been doing incredibly innovative things, including Mighty Law attorneys agreeing to a code of conduct that gives consumers certain rights and benefits that's unlike anything that exists in personal injury today. And the backlash that we got from the personal injury industry was fierce and fast. Everything from reporting us to the bar despite us not doing anything wrong, people making lies and posting them on social media, there were lawsuits that were threatened against us by the biggest law firm in the country, and we even had a billboard campaign that was meant to educate consumers about the misleading personal injury billboards taken off, but right before they were about to be published, because too many personal injury lawyers complained to the billboard companies. So we had tons of these. We've experienced tons of pushback because personal injury is very powerful, and they don't like people trying to change the industry that's been the same for so long.
Mhm. Gotcha. It's something interesting that when you start to revolutionize within a industry that has a long history, it's just the surprising pushback that comes when what your mission is really just to how do we make this better for the consumers. So I'm curious, for the consumers that you have been helping, what has been some of their feedback about the solution that you guys have brought forth?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of concrete benefits to signing up with Mighty Law instead of a traditional personal injury firm. It's less expensive. The fee is smaller. Consumers can try out the service and get free legal services for 60 days, and they're able to leave without owing anything. They If they have a large case, as the settlement value goes up, the fee goes down even more. And a bunch of other concrete differences that all have one thing in common. They change the incentive structure of law firms. So one of the things that we noticed was that personal injury lawyers actually have not the same, they've misaligned incentives with their clients. Despite the fact that they work in contingency, and despite the fact that they only get paid if they win, that actually doesn't mean that they're aligned. And so what we've done is we've created this code of conduct that all the Mighty Law lawyers have agreed to in order to realign those incentives. And so I think clients notice. They've talked to us about they can't believe the fact that our fee is so much lower than other firms. They feel empowered to know that they can leave if they aren't getting satisfactory service without owing us anything in the first 60 days. And frankly, one of the things that we think makes us win is those sorts of people referring us to other friends and family who have been injured themselves.
Gotcha. You bring up a couple of really good points that I want to ask a little bit more about, if I can, on the business model side of things. And we don't have to go into numbers or anything, but I'm curious just from a, process standpoint of, like, usually you don't hear about like companies say, hey, we can charge less. Usually that comes at a sacrifice to something else in their business model. So, how did you guys tackle that? Hey, how do we fix our business model so that we can charge us, or we can have somewhat of an open contract so that they can leave and they're not just stuck with us? How did you guys tackle, your business model to be able to give consumers, that flexibility?
Yeah, so it's a great question. In personal injury, getting a case is incredibly expensive. People spend often thousands and thousands of dollars in order to acquire a new client. A click on Google might be hundreds of dollars alone. And unfortunately, those costs are passed on to consumers through the price. I was once given advice that has always resonated with me. If you've heard of a wine, such as like yellowtail wine, it probably means the quality of the wine is poor, because they spend a disproportionate amount of the money not on the quality of the wine or the bottle, but on their marketing. And I think similarly, when you see these law firms who are doing mass advertising, the amount of money that they're spending unfortunately gets cut into their budget to support clients. So we've largely been operating under the idea that if we can create lower prices for consumers, and those consumers appreciate it, and they tell a friend about the fact that we have lower prices, and we can acquire another client because of that reason, that lower price is more than paid for itself. And so it's not only that we think it's the right thing to do, we think it's a good business model. And so many other industries other than personal injury, they compete on price. That's a natural element to compete on. And the fact that personal injury doesn't compete on price, I think says a lot about the industry itself.
Wow. That's a very interesting perspective. I mean, because you're right. When you look at a lot of industries, the competition is, pretty fierce on pricing, especially when there are a lot of players in the industry. So, now I guess how is when you talk about the lawyers who have agreed to the mighty kind of code of conduct, how has that process been of finding lawyers who do want to agree with the code of conduct, the mighty code of conduct?
We've actually found a lot of lawyers who got out of personal injury because they didn't like the way that the personal injury system worked, and they felt like they were taking advantage. And we've only talked to lawyers who have embraced it and actually seen it as a selling point. And I think there's always in an industry a need for something different. There are thousands of law firms that charge the exact same thing, that have the exact same service, that have the exact same lack of transparency. And so changing it up and being different has worked well for us.
Awesome. Now, at this point, how many lawyers, because you said the firm is separate from Mighty, correct?
Yep.
Now, how many lawyers are with the firm?
I think there's about 15 Mighty Law lawyers across 8 states. And we started in 3 about 6 months ago, and we're up to 8, and we're excited about that expansion.
Awesome. Now, I guess for people who are probably wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about so when someone is looking to, say, hey, if I were to ask someone, what is Mighty? What is Mighty about? Like, what does Mighty do? Like, what would be your best way of explaining that to them?
So Mighty Law is where you would go if you got injured after an accident, and you would hire a lawyer, just like hiring any other lawyer that you see, except there's a bunch of key differences that make Mighty Law, frankly, better in my humble opinion. And one of those is that the Mighty Law lawyers have a code of conduct, which we've talked about, that includes things like a lower price than the standard price that personal injury lawyers charge. Another is that they've actually partnered with us, Mighty, to deliver a more holistic service to the consumer. So one of the problems with injury is that in order to move forward with your life, you need more than just a legal settlement. You need to get medical treatment. You might need mental health help. You might need financial support while you're waiting for your settlement. And traditional law firms have tried to ignore as many things as possible that don't affect the settlement. And Mighty believes that people need a more holistic approach and help. And we want to provide a service to the consumer that's all encompassing and helps them with the hard stuff, like getting a settlement, and the soft stuff, like how are you feeling today? Do you need someone to talk to?
Nice, nice. So if someone was interested, where should they find Mighty online?
Mighty.com, mighty.com. One of the best domains around.
Awesome, awesome. Now there's quite a few things that are on the website. What can people kind of expect when they get there?
Yeah, we've designed the website to highlight the holistic nature of our service. So most law firms can help in one way, getting a legal settlement. But if you scroll over how we help on the top nav bar, you'll see that we can help with legal representation, medical care, financial support, and almost everything else. And this isn't you get to pick. This is you get them all. And we go into depth about what each of these means. And we're really proud of the fact that we're able to do so much.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. So before we wrap up, one final question I love asking, everyone that comes on. I mean, if, let's say you were talking to someone, you said, hey, I was on the Law and Finance show with Terrell, and hey, you should go listen to my interview with him. But hey, when you listen to it, here's two really big things that I want you to take away from that conversation. What would your two big takeaways be?
So everybody has friends who get injured, and you may or may not realize it, but they're about to start a perilous journey, and it is incredibly important who they choose for help, for representation, and think twice before you allow them to choose a billboard lawyer, and find help at a company that values transparency, holisticness, lower prices, and alignment incentive. So I think that's one of the things. I think the second thing is probably where you started this chat, which is the world's changing fast, and the industries that don't compete on the important elements, price, quality of service, transparency, are going to get disrupted. And so think about how long you can ride the wave of status quo, and be an early adopter, and try and innovate in your field, because I think that is the way to survive.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for being an amazing guest, and all the best as you continue to grow and help more people. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
If you're looking for ideas on how to manage and grow a profitable law firm, this Facebook group is perfect for you, because every week we are featuring conversations with successful lawyers and businesses related to law firms on tips, ideas, and technology that are helping many people grow and manage a profitable law firm. So if you're looking for great tips and ideas, you definitely want to click the link below so you can join the conversation and be part of the Law Firms and Finance Facebook group.